So we're here tonight to talk about the board of directors. And I think my role in tonight is just to kind of introduce the topic. For those of you that were on our district assembly webcasts, we talked about the three Rotary essentials. That's brand, membership, and foundation. And I think at that meeting, and I'll ask the same question we asked at that meeting is, do you know what your Rotary Club brand is? And that's a question I think stumps a lot of people, but what actually it is your club has a brand whether you like it or not. Your brand is your place in your community and what people's perception of your club are. And so it's how the community feels about your club, how your members feel, how prospective members feel, and terminated members, how they all feel. And that brand, how they feel about things, who do you think sets the tone for that brand but the board of directors? Because the board of directors of your club are the ones that are going to come up with your club mission. They're going to have the strategic vision for what your club is going to be. And that's so critical. So many times our board of directors get kind of bogged down in being a super committee and worrying about who's going to bring lemonade to the party instead of looking at the strategic vision and mission of that club and what that club is going to represent to the community. And so I think that's the really critical thing about a board of directors to me is they're the ones that set that mission. They're the ones that set that strategic tone. And they're the ones that are in charge of really making sure the club meets that vision down the road. And so that's kind of, I just think the role of the board is really critical, and I'm glad we're having this monthly series to talk about the role of the board and how we can make our boards more effective and help improve our clubs. So with that, I think, Dennis, I was supposed to throw it over to you to introduce our speakers and get the show running tonight.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm Dennis Franklin, and I'm one of the district trainers. I have the privilege to be one of the introduction people for tonight's session. Greg, you talked about having a brand, and Dave Cabral, you'll be happy to know we had our first board of directors meeting for my new year, and I talked about community service, commerce, and camaraderie. And that's what we're going with, brother. So thank you very much for your influence.
Oh, here, we got to do the reaction.
Yeah, it was good. I thought it was really good. So, but anyway, I want to start by thanking past District Governor Steve Garrett for the years of work that he's put in to put this thing together and for staying faithful to the end that it's actually become a reality. And what he's done, I believe, is going to have an incredible impact on the clubs in our district itself, really the entire Rotary organization. Not to mention all of the different organizations that we touch, the businesses, the nonprofits that Rotarians interact with. So thank you, Steve, again, for putting this thing together, and District Governor Greg Jones for his support for the project, because without the backing of the District Governor, it probably wouldn't have happened. So thank you very much, both of you gentlemen. I'm excited to kick this thing off because in Rotary, we train our prisoners. We train our presidents. We train our secretaries. We train our treasurers. We train our committee chairs, different people that do the fundraising, et cetera, et cetera. But it seems the only people who don't have a thorough training is for their job function specifically would be board of directors. And Steve and I were talking about this, and we thought, the board of directors, they're the ones that have the responsibility to set policy and to govern the club. They're the ones that are in charge. They're called a board of directors because they direct the clubs. If anybody should be trained, that's, who it should be, the board of directors. So we decided to do something about that. And you're here to hear the first of the series tonight that will be covering the basics of what a board member needs to know to really be as effective as they can possibly be to make a difference. And what we're doing is every Tuesday of each month, the first Tuesday of the month, we're planning on holding 15, 20, 30-minute sessions to address the various things that board members need to know. And those would be things like The next one is going to be on defining documents, your constitution, bylaws, policies, how they interact and what they do for the club. Robert's Rules of Orders will be one. Budgets, how to make them, how to manage them will be another one. How to read financial statements. And I know that a lot of these things are not the most exciting topics that people want to jump in and grab, but they're so critical to running an organization correctly. It's incredible. And we're going to do it in a way that we think is going to be very engaging and very easy to digest. It'll be a lot of fun, I think. And tonight, we're going to do an overview about boards that make a difference. Boards that are focused and accomplish great things. And we're going to really answer the question about what makes those boards so different. We're going to share perspectives from, I think, Steve, you said about a half a dozen people, people that I know personally that have great depth and experience with corporate, with nonprofit, with any kind of Rotary boards. And we're also planning on hearing from some of you. This is an interactive session. So we'll be soliciting your input. We're going to want to know what your thoughts are. So to get us started is the mastermind behind the whole project, Mr. Steve Garrett, past district governor. There you go. Turn it over to you, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Dennis. As Dennis said, I've always been kind of baffled by why we train everybody in Rotary, and sometimes we train them pretty good and sometimes we don't, but we at least make an effort of training everybody. Until a few years ago, we never trained anybody on the board of directors. And the problem is kind of many-fold. One of them is several people will join a Rotary Club board of directors and learn some things, but maybe not everything they should learn. And then they wind up on the hospital board of directors or the city council or some other organization, and they don't actually understand some of the things that they should have understood from being on a member of a board of directors. And what's a good example of that? When we have matured a little bit beyond this, but for a long time, everybody on a board of directors had a portfolio. They were the director of an avenue of service, and they had committees they were responsible for, and oftentimes they wound up as the chairman of all the committees they were responsible for, and oftentimes the board of directors meeting turned into be a committee meeting, and they missed the point. They missed the opportunity to do something, because whether you got conned into being a member of the board of directors or was something you wanted to do, it's an opportunity to make a very big difference, a much bigger difference than anything in the club, probably even more of a difference than the current president of the club, because directors go on for more than 1 year. They go on for 2 years or 3 years, and they have a lot of input and they have a lot of opportunity to do things. I have a little device here I like to share. It's a multi-purpose device. It measures oxygen, but actually the way I look at it is it's a smile-o-meter. It measures how many smiles you get. It measures that's right, Harry's got one. It measures how satisfied you are from the things you're doing. And it's got 2 numbers on it. The other one is the frustrometer, and it tells you how frustrated you are. Unfortunately, boards of directors often turn into people who are not getting a smile, but they're getting a lot of frustrations. So we want to give you some tools to try to turn that into the maximum smile, the minimum frustration. I would like to start the discussion with a short videotape, and it is a dramatization because there's no board of directors that by themselves does this, but it's a place to start a discussion. And when we come back, I want to make sure everybody knows that on the bottom of your screen, there's a place for reactions. And if you click on that reactions, you can put your hand up, and then we know who has something to say, and we'll call upon you, and we'll try to get a little discussion going here. So, Sean, let's show our video.
Call this meeting to order. Will the secretary please read the minutes of the last meeting?
I emailed copies of the minutes to everyone here, but I didn't bring any printed copies with me. Does anybody have any changes they want to make?
I have a change. I had to leave the last meeting early, so I didn't take part in the discussion on the project to clean up the park after the 4th of July picnic. I object to some of the things said, and I think it was a major mistake to take on this project, and I want the minutes of the last meeting to reflect my objection.
You know, the minutes record what was said at the meeting. You can't go back and add what you would have said if you were there.
Then I think we should reopen that discussion so that I can have my comments recorded in this meeting. And everybody will know that I didn't want us to take on this crazy project. That is what I am going to tell everyone when this thing turns into a circus.
That's a valid request, but this is the wrong point in the agenda. We'll take that up under old business later on.
Well, that's fine, except I have to leave early tonight. Can we move my report up to the first part of the agenda? I have a soccer practice for one of my sons, and I can't miss it. You can move the old business section from the end of the agenda right after my report. I talked to Pablo Ramirez of the Tijuana Club last week. I said we would go ahead with a project to rebuild the orphanage in Tijuana this year. We really need all of the members of the club to commit to go down that weekend in February and take on this project. We will need $7,000 to complete our commitment.
What's $7,000? That was not in the budget, and neither was the project. How do you plan on finding the money?
I plan on taking the $7,000 away from Casa Opportunity to build a house in Tijuana project. That is something we've never done before, and there's no reason for us to start this year. That money will be much better used for the orphanage.
Wait a minute. I committed us to Casa Opportunity. I told the district governor at Pets that we are in on her Casa project. The governor said that it's important that we all go down there and build a dozen homes. You may be the international service director, but I am the president of this club. You can't make decisions like that. I committed the club to the Casa project.
Well, then, I guess we are committed to both projects.
Wait a minute. Where is the money for either of these projects?
That brings us back to the 4th of July picnic project. We can cancel that project and use that money for our international service project.
There was no money allocated to the 4th of July picnic project. It's a simple, hands-on service project. There's no revenue there. We still need to know where the money is going to come from for the service project.
Sorry, excuse me. Sorry, Madam President. Late. Did I miss anything important?
Not really. It seems a couple of people have committed the club on two projects that will cost about $14,000 that we don't have, but I'm sure there's a brilliant answer to be offered in the next few minutes.
Well, actually, that leads right into my idea. If every member of this club brings in 3 new members over the next 3 quarters, that's just 1 new member per quarter per member. That'll bring in 150 new members. Now, with our $100 initiation fee, we'll have an instant 15 thou. I found this very motivational speaker for the next meeting. We'll get this plan rolling right away.
We already have programs booked for the next 2 months.
And let's not forget our little budgetary problem, namely that our current dues and meals charges don't cover our current meal costs. The plan was, as we made up for our visitor meals, but we don't have many visitors. So I guess membership needs to do some work.
Well, I think it sounds like we need a major dues increase and bump up in meal charges.
Well,
then.
we can increase dues and meal charges. It'll ruin our membership drive. What we need is a good fundraising idea.
Since everyone is so interested in doing a fundraiser, we might want to move that topic onto the agenda. I wish I could tell you that my committee has a whole bunch of great fundraising ideas. I have called 2 committee meetings, but nobody showed up for either one. It seems my committee is dysfunctional. Does anyone have any good ideas of how we can raise some money?
Well, why don't we just do the 10K run like we did for so many years?
Maybe we should look at sponsoring a wheelchair and walker race.
Need to figure out how to fund it. Meanwhile, I'm going to send out an email to all of our members telling them that we should avoid the 4th of July picnic cleanup and cast a missed opportunity.
Wait, wouldn't it seem like a better idea for us to solve these problems at the board level and not involve all the members?
Don't worry about the general membership. They won't show up for committee meeting, much less take a stand on anything.
Hey, speaking of attending meetings, where's Joe? He hasn't made one board meeting yet this year.
Joe only agreed to serve on the board if he didn't have to attend meetings.
I don't know, the last time I showed this, somebody said, did you sneak into our board meeting and tape that? No, this is a dramatization done by the not ready for prime time players. Many of them you may have recognized. I know Cliff probably recognized a couple of them. Does anybody have any thoughts they would like to share on this topic? Or
I'm watching or
Hi, Cliff.
participating in a video thing right now.
Anybody have any thoughts they want to share? Raise your hand.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
Buff. Turn your thing on. Hello, Buff.
Okay. Yeah, we do some of those things in our board, but we spread them out over the whole year. Not all.
You have those arguments at your board?
It's not too bad, but there is a lot of, a little bit fast and loose and not being real sure what funds are allocatable and whose projects are what, and a little bit, but it really is spread out over the year. We rarely have a whole meeting. We've got two board members here. They could attest to this, but we rarely have one meeting that's that screwed up.
Okay, any other thoughts? Yes, Sam.
This is Gary. I mean, personally, I'd love to have those kinds of conflicts, that we have that many ambitious people in the club. It's more likely that we're talking about not wanting to do things.
Yeah.
So I'd love to be fighting over the number of projects we were doing.
Sam, what do you think?
Well, I think the board meeting is where you try to get things done, where you don't involve everybody. So the whole club. So an agenda is really important, and then somebody your president has to have charge of that agenda, and don't try to get off base like that, so that you can get things done. Because that was kind of chaotic, and I think that's what we're trying to see.
I think the lesson, to me, the lesson from this little video is the thing about boards being committee meetings. I mean, okay, so you need to do a fundraiser. Well, you got a fundraising committee. I'm sorry they're not dysfunctional, but don't turn the board into dysfunctional. But the main thing is I don't think our boards often think big enough. They don't think big enough. They get bogged down in little things. So I'm going to show you another member of our Rotary district who's going to share a thought about thinking big. Sean?
Ann Lutz, the past president of the Rotary Club of Monrovia, past assistant governor, past district trainer, vision facilitator, and even a former mayor of the city of Monrovia, what she had to say about boards of directors and the important things that they do.
Thank you, Steve. I did bring something I'd like to show everybody if you have a few minutes. I think this would be really a good way for us to start our next conversation.
The Rotary Club in every town usually meets once a week. Here's a speaker, eats a little chicken or a ham and raisin sauce, carries on various good works, and it's all male, 100%. A California Rotary Club has defied this rule and tradition and accepted 3 women members, and the National Rotary has expelled the whole club. Roy Neal in Los Angeles.
It was not a routine meeting when the Duarte Rotary Club met last January. Rotary International had heard that this club had defied rules and regulations by taking in 3 women to boost its sagging membership, and one had been a member for more than a year. Headquarters passed down an edict: get rid of the women or lose your charter. The club voted to defy the order, and now it's been advised by telegram that the charter has been revoked. President Richard Key says the club won't take the decision lying down.
We are trying to straighten out the thing within the framework of Rotary, and if we cannot do it that way, we will move to the courts to straighten out the issue, and we think it's a human rights issue, and that it's...
So now that you've seen this video, which is of Rotary, this is Rotary's great, one of our biggest things we've ever done that the board undertook. Let's talk about how do boards undertake these big tasks, what brings them to these big tasks, and send a couple more examples. First, I think with Rotary and some of the other things, other boards, you have to really know where your board sits and what the goals are for your board for the future. And if you're a Rotary Club and you've not gone through a visioning process, you might want to think about doing a visioning process. It'll help identify the goals, long-term for your board. Boards can make decisions that will change people's lives, that will make people better. And isn't that what Rotary is all about?
Thank you very much, Mary Ann. You know, I was a young Rotarian in the Rotary Club of Arcadia when this whole thing went down. And the Rotary Club of Arcadia was a sponsor of the Rotary Club of Duarte. So they showed up at our door and they said, we need some help. We threw some money in the pocket, and one of our Rotarian members said, I'll take it and we'll file a lawsuit. You know, I guess nobody really thought how big a thing that was going to be at that time, except the board of directors of the Rotary Club of Duarte. And they made a conscious decision that this is what they were going to do, and they were not going to just change the Rotary Club of Duarte if that was, you know, they went to the council of legislation. If they had to, they were going to change Rotary. They made a big decision, and Sylvia Whitlock, the first lady president of Rotary Club, has become a dear friend of mine over the years. And as I go places with Sylvia, people come up, and especially the women, and they say, thank you, Sylvia, for bringing women into Rotary. And Sylvia's answer is, I didn't bring women into Rotary. It was the men of the Duarte Club that brought the women into Rotary. So they made a conscious decision that they were going to do something big. It's a little tiny club. It still only has about 19 or 20 members. And I wish they would become a bigger club, but they did make a difference. And they didn't make a difference by sitting around the board meeting arguing about fundraising and projects and who was going to do what. They said, let's make a difference. And I think your Rotary Club ought to take that attitude and say, what can we do to make a difference? Now, I want to introduce you to another one of my friends. I'm not a Rotarian. Her husband's a Kiwanian. We've offered him the opportunity to upgrade. Sean?
Someone who's a new friend of mine, Rose Mercier, but she's with an organization that I've dealt with and worked with for many years. I first went to Board of Directors School 20-some years ago with John Carver, and John Carver's organization is now called the Governance Coach, and Rose is one of their senior consultants. And she has a lot of comments that we're going to be looking at when we talk about policy governance, but I pulled a couple of comments out that I think are very applicable when it comes to what boards should be doing, the bottom line of what boards should be doing. So, Rose, what do you think the board should be doing?
At the front of the sentence, we exist so that, right? This difference happens in the world for these people. And if you're clear about that, and then you don't get into through this and through that and all of this, and you don't end up with, like hollow marketing slogans, which lots of, missions are, and you just read them and go like, and so what, right? Like,
yeah,
what you do, are you making a difference, and how do you know you're making a difference? Because that's the other part that's important, right? About ends or purposes. You need to know what difference you're making. So eventually you need to think about, well, how do we measure that, right? Like, how does that actually show up? Whether it's, the number of lives we've affected this year, or how we've affected them, or how are people different, right? And that is really important. I mean, for me, that is the most important thing that a board needs to do. One of the fundamental things that boards should be doing, besides the sorting out what you should be doing now, is thinking about and developing strategic foresight. So how is Rotary, how is your club or your district or internationally going to continue to be relevant in the future? What factors are at play that are going to influence how you are and what you do and whether or not you have a role in the future? And if you're not doing that work as a board, you will fail ultimately.
Yeah. It's I think that's wise words, and it goes along with my previous comment about thinking bigger and doing some bigger things besides just arguing about whether we're going to do this project or that project, and my committee's not working. And so I went out and I asked some of the members of our club, of our district, four people from 4 different clubs, and I said, what do you think? And I tried to get it down to 3 minutes. I got to tell you, people had some good things to say. So bear with me as we listen to Mr. Las Vegas.
Insight from Mr. Rotary in Las Vegas, Dave Cabral, who's been probably past everything but district governor, and that's not my fault. I've tried. So Dave had some thoughts about how club boards of directors make a difference, and I'd like to hear what his thoughts are.
More than make a difference, they're responsible for the club. I mean, in the sense that I see a board of directors as being the representative of the people, almost like a Congress or a state legislature. They represent the stakeholders in whatever that organization might be. In the corporate world, the board of directors represents the shareholders, the people who actually literally own the company, and they, you know, who can't be there to run the company, they're the representatives. In the nonprofit world, and I've been on several nonprofit boards, you know, the function of the board is to really to represent the donors and the beneficiaries of whatever that nonprofit may be. And so that's their role. In a Rotary Club or organizations like a Rotary, I see the board as representing the members. And to a certain extent, the other stakeholders being the beneficiaries of the Rotary Club. But mostly the board represents the members. It's the members who elect the board. And the members, you know, what they want to see a club that runs well. They want to be part of a good club. And, but not everybody can be a cook in the kitchen. And so the members trust the board to see that the club is going to function and meet their needs. I know you've spoken about the customers of the Rotary Club is the members, and I agree with that completely. I see the board's role as helping to guide the president to being a sounding board for the president. Be there when there's a problem in the club, and invariably problems come up in Rotary clubs. Those of us that have been around as many years as some of us have all seen problems in our own clubs, problems in other clubs, and they're there to support the president and to communicate that support to the members. So that's kind of where they fit in. I see the board as really having a major role in the brainstorming of the club, of where it's going. You know, a lot of clubs, my club and a lot of clubs, before the Rotary year starts, we'll have an annual planning meeting, retreat sort of a thing, in which the president and the incoming president and his or her board, committee members, a few other key players in the club will get together and spend a few hours, half a day or whatever it is, kind of talking through and mapping out where the club is going for the year. And that's really, I think, a big part of the role of the board of directors. Really kind of setting the tone for where the club is going and being there to help the president get there. Just a personal example with my club, the Summerlin Rotary Club. We had a planning session before the year started, and we were talking about the directions we wanted to go, the projects we wanted to be involved in, some new ideas that we wanted to bring on board with respect to vocational service, and really promoting the members and their businesses. And one of the newer members in the club raised his hand and he said, you know, we're really kind of talking about 3 C's here: community, commerce, and camaraderie. And that changed the whole tone of the meeting, and it literally set the course for our club for the whole Rotary year. And that is part of our theme. It is on the Summerlin Club Rotary now: community, commerce, and camaraderie. Service to the community, honoring our businesses and our members, and friendship and fellowship, and bringing that all together. So that's just one example of the kind of function that the board of directors can have for a club. And that's big. That sets the tone for the future. I think another really big role for a board of directors of an organization like Rotary in particular, which changes its whole organization every year, I think probably one of the most important roles that a board of directors can have is to see that the future sustainability, the future and sustainability of the club is there. That to have a role in the succession planning of the leadership of the club, to be identifying members that can be developed to be the future leadership of the club. Just as I mentioned earlier, that members want to be part of a good club, they want to be part of a club that's going to have a future. And so really addressing that future of the club and sustainability and succession planning, developing members to take on those leadership roles, looking to identifying people in the community who should be a part of the future of the club. That really on the highest level is where the board really needs to function. Now, board members can be committee chairs, they can have other roles and do other things in the club. They certainly can be part of the organization, the management, but on the highest level, that is where I see a board of directors really doing its most valuable work.
Thank you very much, Dave. I appreciate your comments a lot. The idea of somebody having two jobs, you can have two jobs. One person can have two jobs. It's important that you keep in mind that two jobs is two separate jobs. Being a member of the board is not the same as being a committee chairman or a member of the club. What do we got next, Sean?
Some thoughts from immediate past District Governor Luann Arredondo about the importance of boards of directors.
I think about the club board and the board of directors. What do I really think its purpose is? What do I think the point is beyond the technical jargon? And it really came down to the board creates the sustainable future for the club. That's really what it all boils down to, whether you're looking at the ethical decisions they make, the judgments they have to make given the challenges that may come up or not come up during their meetings, the legal governance, the financial governance, the policy making. At the end of the day, all of it is based on the sustainable future of the club and making sound decisions. And if you have a board that's in place for a few years, but also rotates, then you create that continuity in the club that a president who's changing year over year can't possibly create as effectively as a board that's there to support them in their decisions as well.
So Luann had the shortest of all the comments. Maybe that's because she's a recent district governor and we've just worn her out over the last year. One more comment for us here. Sean?
Let me introduce you to Philip Miles, past president of the Rotary Club of Pasadena.
Some basic functions of the board. It's very important that they approve, they're involved in the finances, they approve the annual budget of the club and understand the budget and the monthly financial reports. If you the budget, it needs to be approved by the board. Once the budget is approved, you can basically make the expenditures that you want. So the board also has other purposes. It's to vote on matters of policy or significant change in the way the club operates. And those are things that are not part of the day-to-day meetings in most clubs. You also have an important function to approve new members and resignation. Members have to be approved by the board this year, and usually be done by a process which is on the consent calendar. In other words, there doesn't have to be a lot of discussion over it, but there may be. If there's anything that's contentious, it needs to come before the board and be discussed. In our club, which is Pasadena, we have membership of the board for 3 years. I don't know if that's district-wide, but 3 years is a good time to be on the board because you can see the changes in the policy of the president. Now, the president is he's your leader, but he needs you to advise him, and he needs you to keep him in check sometimes if you feel that he's doing something that is not within the auspices of the club, or not with, it may be something the Rotary International doesn't allow. And it's good to familiarize yourself with all of these things as a board member, but the president needs to lead the board, and the board needs to do their homework. By that, the members need to be punctual as a courtesy to others, to ensure the effectiveness of the board, and to ensure a quorum, in other words, a majority of the board is present so the meeting can begin on time. I like the term, it's an acronym that's we have a lot of acronyms in Rotary, as you know, and this is the Gaga syndrome, where it's go along to get along, or get along to go along, whatever you want to call it. But it's the idea that the president says yes, and I want to do this, and they all say yes, 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 and they don't really know whether it's good or bad for the club. So I think to be effective, they have to, the members should review their materials ahead of the meeting, get the material, and having that advance information is critical to getting good decisions. The president can ensure that they receive an opportunity to voice their opinion in an orderly and business-like manner. You know, you don't want people talking across the table to each other, having their own private arguments. So parliamentary procedures should be used at all times. And members can address the president, not other members. And for that, I reference Robert's Rules of Order, which, you know, you then have an orderly meeting where people all get to participate in the meeting, they all have opinions, and good decisions are reached. And there's a process which we go through where people make a motion, in case you're not familiar, and a motion has to come from the floor. It needs a second for it to be discussed, and then it's discussed, and then there's a vote held on it. It's that simple. Of course, today, the board meetings take on a different light in the fact that we're having most of our date, because it's also a technology issue, including getting the right lighting, the right setting, and all those things. But it has changed the way we do business here at Rotary, and I think it should be addressed. I don't know if I answered your question properly, Steve, but I give them the best 3 to 5 minute shot.
Let me ask you another question, Phil.
Okay.
What would Pasadena be like if there was no Pasadena Rotary? Would the city notice the loss?
Okay, if there was no, what would Pasadena be like if there was no well, the city of Pasadena would be like without Pasadena Rotary.
Yeah.
The question, okay. I'm sorry, we had a technology glitch there. I would say Pasadena contributes a huge amount to the well-being of the city generally, and in particular with reference to the non-profit. We support and have members for many of the larger charities in Pasadena. They support medical, homelessness, even the Humane Society, animal welfare, and everything, and not just after our money, because you know we have a reasonable amount to allocate each year to those places, and anyone else that wants to apply for a grant. But we have supported over 100 years in business in Pasadena. We have supported a lot of the local nonprofits in their endeavors. We've also had projects where we've gone out and helped them. And we're known as a member. We also have the fire chief and police chief. So we're in touch with the public safety, and we concern ourselves with issues in that regard. So I would say we've been moderately to very influential in the city of Pasadena.
Well, Phil, thank you for your 15 minutes. You've been very helpful to me.
You're very welcome, Stephen. It's been my pleasure. I hope to be back with.
You know, it's. I think that's a good question to ask your club. What would your city be like if there was no Rotary Club in your city? And I'm reminded of a story that recently, not too long ago, took place. We used to have a Rotary Club in Caliente. Caliente's a little town. Rotary told me that we should close the club because there were only 16 members in it. And I told Rotary that there's 1,600 people in the county, in Lincoln County. So when Chicago and Evanston gets up to 1%, call me back. Well, this little tiny Rotary Club closed, or we thought it closed. It was gone. And I happened to be driving to Salt Lake, and I took that Road 95, and I stopped in at Caliente, and I had breakfast at the Naughty Pine Cafe, and I asked the lady, I said, whatever happened to the Rotary Club? And she said, oh, they're right over there. And I went over and I recognized a couple of them, and they recognized me, a couple of me, or one of me, I guess. And we started chatting for a while. And I said, what happened to the Rotary Club? He says, well, we're still a Rotary Club. We just don't belong to Rotary anymore. We do all the things that we did before. And in essence, this little Rotary Club of 10 or 12 people is the fabric of the community in Caliente. Caliente would be a very different town if it wasn't for this little group of 10 or 12 people. How different would your town be if you didn't have your Rotary Club in your town? That's a good question to ask. One more. Now,
well, first of all, it's about the delegation. It starts at the top, right? So I think any club president, the beauty of Rotary is the democracy, is nobody's in charge forever. And, even the worst leader is only in charge for a year, right? So people, I think, gravitate to that everybody feels they have a voice and they have a seat at the table. Overall, I think presidents and leaders, club presidents, oftentimes tend to just delegate tasks because they want XYZ accomplished, but they don't necessarily delegate the empowerment. And that's if we really want to grow Rotary, and the people we attract to Rotary are leaders by their very definition. People who walk in our doors are leaders. They're accomplished individuals in whatever field of business they're in. So these are intelligent people who know how to get things done. They don't need to be micromanaged. And oftentimes, if we just delegate a task, we can turn them away and leave a sour taste in their mouth from Rotary. So with that, yes, of course, there's protocols, there's financial protocols, there's district grant guidelines, whatever it is. But within that, like I said, if the goal is kids getting clothes, kids get books, digging a water well, whatever it is, we don't always have to go A, B, C to get there. And we can go a different way. And maybe this person knows somebody else who can make a different connection. So I think that's the first way boards can make a difference is internally, is delegating empowerment and not just the tasks. And then secondly, I think too, is people just being prepared, right? If you are the leader, you want people to be prepared. People show up early to the meeting. People are already there to make decisions at the board meeting, not to discuss stuff. They're ready, they're prepared, they're informed, they can move ahead. But in order for that to happen, you as the leader need to request the agenda items and then of course put out the agenda 2 to 3 days ahead of time to ensure that people know what is coming up and that they are prepared to talk about. And that includes the main thing, that includes financial statements. So are your financial statements in order, and can you get them in the right time? So oftentimes, as we know, volunteer leaders, the statements at the end of the month don't come out till the 10th of the month. And maybe your treasurer, who is a volunteer leader, maybe they, cannot get to it by the 10th every month. So instead of you having your club board meeting at the second Thursday, maybe you need to move it to the third Thursday to give the treasurer that time so that you can have updated financials to make a decision, instead of just saying, oh, we've always met at the second Tuesday of the month. So our financials are always a month late, and we don't really know. We make decisions and kind of blindly because we don't have updated data. So I think that is something. How do we effectively make those decisions? So being prepared, and as the leader, getting the agenda out with all the reading materials to help people do that. And then, what are you rewarding? That's the other thing. How board of directors make a difference. Oftentimes, if other people see bad behavior being rewarded, or if there is no penalty for that, then they assume that is okay to do that. So if people don't show up for meetings, or if board members are unprepared and they don't have a committee report to give, if they really have nothing to give, that's fine. But if there's something happening and they just say, oh, I don't know, I Joe didn't call me back, so I don't know what's going on. No, that shouldn't just be, okay, hey, can you please call Joe then and report back next month? Now we've lost 2 months and the club doesn't know what's going on. So what is being rewarded? If that kind of behavior is being rewarded, we shouldn't be surprised if clubs and specific projects fail. So do you expect if a board member misses 2 consecutive meetings, is that person now kicked off? A lot of clubs have that in their bylaws, but they don't enforce that rule. So how do we gently, politely talk to those members to say, hey, if you're too busy, like most people are, maybe it's time to step aside and, even midterm to give whomever another opportunity. But I think that's also where people need to recognize everybody's busy. Busy is not an excuse anymore. You volunteered to be on this board because you put your name in the hat. You were elected by your peers to serve in this capacity. And if you're too busy, family commitments, work commitments, whatever it is, no judgment, but then please don't take up a seat if you're not making a difference. So I think that is the rewards, right?
I like that.
Well, I appreciate all the things that our experts have had to say. Many of them learned these lessons the hard way. Some of them learned the lessons by going to PETS and listening to Cliff Docterman over the years. Does anybody have any questions or any comments that they would like to add to the discussion? Wow.
This is Craig. I have so much to absorb in just this little bit. I'm overwhelmed. And enthused. But I've got to say something. The question of asking, what does your club mean in your community? What would it be like if it wasn't there? I mean, that just sets the tone to me, of how our members need to feel about our club and the future of it. And what kind of difference are we going to make? I mean, after all, why do we go? Why do we even join if we don't want to do something?
Yeah, it's more than just a sign on the post on the way into town. Buff, what do you think?
I have a different point, but we have both a board and a management committee. The management committee is all the people who do stuff or head up the projects and all those things. And our board tends to get a little bit into that operations realm, but we try to keep it focused on policy and the big decisions. My question, though, is about, we don't have a foundation board as such. Our board is also the foundation board. And I don't know that we need to talk about it here, but at some point, I think that would be an interesting thing to cover.
Yeah, we, at a later time, we're going to talk about the difference between 501c3, 501c4. Interestingly, the legal requirements in Nevada are not the same as they are in California, but we'll talk about that.
I would appreciate that.
Yeah, and it's a good point. We have clubs in the district that have separate foundations, and they don't use them very well. We have clubs in the district that have separate foundations, and they use them very, very well. So we'll talk about that some.
Well, we have a separate foundation account, to be sure, but we don't have a separate board for the foundation. Our board covers both, and it's provided in the bylaws.
Yeah, and you actually have a separate corporation too. You have 2 corporations.
Right, so we have 2 bank accounts and all of that, but only 1 board.
Right, and that's okay, because city councils can be redevelopment agencies and the same people. But you have to have 2 separate board meetings, 2 separate sets of minutes. And maybe the board shouldn't be the same. Any other questions or comments?
I just thought, Steve, I was listening to the whole thing, and I saw the importance of being prepared, having your agenda ahead of time, like Michael was saying, 3 days ahead of time, having people have the opportunity to have their input, and you can have that done ahead of time, but then you can control the meeting so it doesn't get out of hand like your video that you started with. Everybody had their own agenda and was going in their own direction and doing their own thing, and that they weren't working as a group. Whereas if they are prepared, people have their input ahead of time, then you're ready to go and you're set for success.
Yeah, it's the dramatization is too true too much of the time. So
I really liked the question that we exist as a club so that whatever benefit in the community will happen. I think that that's really important. Is the why, is why do we exist as a club? I think that was really powerful.
Powerful.
Yeah. And this is unfortunately too few times do our boards of directors think a lot about that because they're too busy doing committee work. Cliff Docterman, thank you. What do you have to say, sir?
Steve, a couple of questions came to my mind. You have a board meeting, but what are you doing to transfer to the membership the work and the issues that the board takes on? I've seen so many clubs that the only people that know what in the world is going on in the club are the 6 or 8 board members, and the rest of the people are just expected to show up, pay their dues, and take part in committees. I guess the question is really, how do you really, in the board, really involve the membership? Second question, does your board really understand that sometimes there are very, very serious questions that come before a board of a Rotary Club? I remember when I was president, a club back in Pennsylvania, they sold some kind of barbecued chicken or something at the county fair. And one of the members had a little beer between each roll of chicken or something. I don't know what it was, but he fell into the barbecue pit on the ground. And the responsibility of that club for this member and his health and the recovery, I think sometimes we say, oh, Joe hasn't served on the board, elect him. But there are some times that you have some serious, serious problems. I know firsthand a Rotary Club here in our area. Well, it was my Rotary Club, the Rotary Club I'm in. The past president of the club, the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, was so free with being able to support everything because he was stealing money from members who were investing in some kind of investment he had. And the day that that came, that it was all a phony investment, one of the members died from a heart attack because he had put his whole resources for retirement into this phony investment scheme of the past club president. He ultimately, everybody got their back because they had a very, very sharp attorney. The club past president went up the stir for a while, few 8 or 10 years and that sort of thing. I sometimes realize that boards of directors are elected because, oh, you know, Joe hasn't served, or Mary, she's a real nice cutie here, and but there's some serious things that can happen, and I've seen so many of them because they come often before the president of Rotary International, of things happening in clubs, of money disappearing. I remember of one up here in Northern California where the club secretary, or maybe it was the club treasurer, absconded with $25,000 or $30,000 of the club's money. And, you know, these are real problems. And when you talk about serving on the board of directors of club, you really need to have people that are serious-minded, who are knowledgeable, and who recognizes what's a good legal problem, what's a human problem, what's a frivolous problem, and what other kinds of things. So I've enjoyed the discussion, but I also just wanted to bring in the fact that there are issues that sometimes a club will have to face, that these are really tough things to dealing with their friends, their buddies, their sisters, the members of the club, everybody. And you're gonna have to turn your face to that person. I know of a case right now where a man who was president of the Chamber of Commerce in the community just absconded with $200,000 of money that was collected for some special projects by a park committee and one thing and another. So these are not just, you serve on the board, you haven't done it. You really need to be responsible and train those board members that there may be some tough issues coming before them and that they have to take a tough stand in event, just some personal.
One of our future sessions has to do with some of the things you just talked about. I'm a longtime chairman of a corporation that's been very successful, nonprofit corporation, and in the last few years we have changed our board of directors by bringing young people on, because everybody on the board, I was the youngest guy on the board, and that's kind of scary. And what I keep telling our new board members, which I think is very applicable, your job is to ask questions. Just keep asking questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Keep asking questions. And good points, Cliff. Cliff and I were both involved with the Boy Scouts for many years. They should have had some people asking more questions over the years, shouldn't they, Cliff? Could have avoided some problems, couldn't they?
Great to see Diana Barton over
Hi,
here.
Diana. Yes. Diana's not a member of our district. Her former husband, is one of the past directors of Rotary International. You're from Northern California, Stockton, is it?
Madera. Right in the center of California, District 5220.
Yeah, I've driven through Madera a lot of times.
Her husband was district governor twice. Now that's what you call either dedication or mental capability.
The guy missed 2 meetings, didn't he? Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Not tonight.
We have hit our hour. Thank you all much for your participation. This will be on the district website and my website once we get the recording all cleaned up. Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks, Steve.